It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Hello, folks. This is the More Money Show. This is WABC. This is Steve Moore, and we are thrilled to be with you. We've got all hands on deck because we will be taking your calls today. Exciting times. I wonder how many of you are coming to Washington. I know that they're not going to have the parade. They're not going to have the outdoor swearing in on Monday, but it is going to be an amazing period. I think that Trump is going to give a speech that hopefully will unite the American people. Remember, it was exactly 4 years ago that Joe Biden walked in and gave this speech that was he talked all about unity. And folks, I can't think of one thing that Joe Biden did to unify the country. And I don't know, anybody who's got an idea of something that Joe Biden did that unified the country, call in, because we'll be taking your calls all day on the More Money Show. By the way, we are on 1 to 3 p.m. every Saturday. We follow the great Larry Kudlow, so that is a real privilege. And I want to thank all of my loyal listeners. We have great ratings. We have a great educated, highly educated listenership because you care about our country. You care about making money. You care about how we can make our country great again, which is something I think that we can all agree Donald Trump has a great chance of doing that. I want to hear today from Democrats, and I do this every now and then. I have a special call out to Democrats, and I want to hear from you if you're a Democrat, if you didn't vote for Donald Trump, what you would like to hear and see from Donald Trump in the next 4 years. What would make you happy? Because I think Trump has a high approval rating right now. He's at 52%, which is very high for Trump. I don't think in his first term he was ever even near 50%. And he's only got a negative of 38%. So he has a plus 14. That's a really good number for an incoming president. And I think the American people do want him to succeed. I was saying on Larry's show earlier today that 8 years ago, people were fearful of what Trump might do. I think today, Americans are hopeful about what Trump is going to do to make the economy great again. So it's going to be a wonderful weekend. It started yesterday where all the streets are being closed down in Washington, D.C. Hard to get from point A to point B. We're doing a bunch of events at the Unleash Prosperity. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have Art Laffer in town and talk about the pro-growth agenda that Donald Trump has to embrace to bring this economy back. And I want to start off this show by making a point that Larry Kudlow ended his show on, which is that first of all, I thought Joe Biden's farewell address was absolutely despicable, just despicable. I mean, he basically called Trump autocrat. And, who does that? We all kind of cheer for the incoming president to do the right thing, and then the other thing Biden did was he kept talking about all the wonderful things he did. What? What exactly did he do that was so wonderful? I can't think of virtually a single thing. And I think almost everything that he did made the economy worse, not better. Biden continues to repeat two lies. And I know he's yesterday, but it's important for the history books to get this right. No, it is not true that he took over with a failing economy. The economy was recovering for the last 6 months before Biden came to office. We had 11% growth. We had a huge comeback in jobs as we reopened the economy after the worst of COVID was over. Now, you all know me. If you're a regular listener to this show, you know I think it is one of the greatest tragedies in American history, and one of the greatest mistakes of our federal government to shut down our economy, shut down our schools, shut down our parks, our churches. Outrageous abuse of power. We cannot allow that ever to happen. But my point is that it was over when Biden came in. We had the economy growing, and what he did was spend another $3 trillion. By the way, Trump is not blameless in this either. He spent $1 trillion on his way out as well. But that's what led to the giant inflation that was really the undoing of Joe Biden, along with the massive illegal immigration. So that's lie number one, that, oh, I inherited a crisis and, I fixed everything. The second lie is that he kept saying, I'm handing over to Donald Trump a healthy economy. He is not. He is not. And look, I'd love to be rosy-eyed and, talk about how wonderful everything is going to be. And I think we're going to see a nice spurt of growth. But Trump has a lot to clean up. I mean, we're in a mess. We're in a ditch right now, folks, thanks to Joe Biden, thanks to the Democrats who ran Congress. Look at what's happened to our debt and our deficit. The debt in 4 years, in a period that was supposed to be a period of recovery from a crisis, not the crisis period, the recovery. Normally, you start paying down your debt. We added $7 trillion of debt in 4 years. Thanks, Joe. Great job. Wonderful. Then the next thing that he did, because the spending went through the roof, the inflation went through the roof. Again, if you're a normal listener to the show, I've said this over and over, so I apologize to have to keep making this point. But a lot of people don't understand this, that when the government spends trillions of dollars it doesn't have, one of the ways it finances this is by printing money. And when you print money, you get higher inflation, as Milton Friedman, the greatest economist of the last 100 years, taught us. And by the way, I feel so blessed that I was able to get to know Milton Friedman in the late 90s before he died. But he taught us that inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's what happened under Biden. We had not much production, but we had a huge production of dollars. And so the dollar was worth less. And here's what's scary. Inflation is rising again right now as we speak. We're going to be looking at 4 to 5% inflation when Trump comes into office. Now, I know we had a report that just came out this week that said 3% inflation for the month of November. But for the month of December and January, I think you take it all in and it's going to be closer to 4 to 5%. That's going in the wrong direction. And we like to look at the commodity prices. They're through the roof. Just in the last 2 months, commodity prices are up 11%. If commodity prices are up, corn and wheat and cotton and oil and gas and the copper, if they're up in price, guess what? That means consumer prices are going to go up too. What the point I'm making is this is not a healthy economy. We need steroids. We need something to get the economy growing again. And I know Trump has a good formula. I'm excited about what he wants to do with respect to these executive orders. I think we should pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. I think every single green energy initiative, all of them were a failure, an expensive failure. Those should be repealed immediately, and that includes the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. We can't afford this stuff. I think we should repeal the mandate that requires people to buy EVs and that requires the manufacturers to build them. That makes no sense. This is America. You should be able to buy whatever car you want to. I think that will be on the list. I think we should have an executive order that says every child in America should be able to go to a good school. I'm a big school choice fan. The money should follow the children, not the education bureaucracy. And one of the great tragedies in America is that at least half of Americans are going to absolutely horrible schools that are not performing. So let them have an alternative. Let them go to Catholic schools, Montessori schools, Jewish schools, charter schools, but get them out of these failed public schools, especially if they are in the inner city. Immigration, absolutely. We have to secure the border. We absolutely have to do that. I'm not wild about the idea of deportation. I'm a little nervous about that. And by the way, that's another issue I want to ask you about. Do you think we should be deporting people? Now, I think everyone agrees, unless you're a crazy leftist, that we should deport criminal aliens, people who are a danger to the American citizens or have committed crime while in this country illegally. You're out of here. You are out of here. But are we going to deport people who are working? I don't know. I don't know the solution to that problem, but I don't want to see, 3 million people deported out of our country. And I'm not quite sure how to handle that, but I'm not sure the optics are going to be very good either if we're deporting people and putting on trains and have them leave the United States. But criminals, yes, criminal or people who are in the country who are not contributing, if they're just sitting there on welfare collecting food stamps, yeah, you're out of here. We don't need you. So that'll be a big one. Another headline from this week that I want to talk about throughout the show is what you think of this TikTok ruling. It's a big, big deal. I think the Supreme Court decision, the court decision was a mistake. I think shutting down TikTok is a mistake, but I know, even people on my staff, we all have very different opinions on this. So I'd like for you all to weigh in on this. You are my focus group. You're America's focus group when you're listening to the More Money Show. So tell me what you think. My attitude is if 135 million Americans are watching and TikTok, and that includes my wife, that includes a lot of her friends, and they use it for gardening. They like the funny videos. They like the financial tips, all of that stuff. I don't find that to be subversive, and I'm a big pro-choice person. If you're worried about China prying into your private information, then don't use it. But if you like the product, as 135 million Americans do, let them do it. That's my view. But look, I understand people are worried about China. They're worried about China having access to this information. Do you think that tomorrow TikTok should be shut down? I say no. What do you say, Tim?
That's a loaded question.
So my producer here, he's going to think about it. By the end of the show, in 2 hours' time, we will have our executive producer and our executive director of Unleash Prosperity. We'll get an answer. We'll pry an answer out of him. But I want to hear your answers, folks. You can tell I'm a little undecided, but I'm going to take the side of TikTok. Okay. But I want to hear from you on that. So a lot to discuss. We're going to be back in just a minute. And my first guest, you're going to love this guy, Mick Mulvaney. You know Mick Mulvaney. He was the chief of staff of Donald Trump. We're going to have a wonderful conversation about Donald Trump, what it's like to be in the Oval Office with him. I've been in the Oval Office with him about 8 or 10 times. It's an amazing experience to be with this guy. But no one was in the Oval Office more often than Mick Mulvaney and knows Donald Trump, his habits, his demeanor, and all of these things. So we'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Do not change that dial because we are live and in color.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. We're here every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3 p.m. Celebrating this inauguration of is it the 47th president? 47. And this is going to be a historic occasion, but it's not going to be outside. It will be inside because it is so freezing cold here in Washington, D.C. And I have to say, I think Trump made the right decision here. It is going to, people were going to go into the Capitol area outdoors as early as 8 in the morning. They were going to wait out there for 4.5 hours in the freezing cold weather because it's supposed to be like 12 degrees. And, I would really worry about, how people were going to deal with that frigid cold weather and the really freezing cold winds. And then it takes about 2 hours to get out of there after the event is over. So they'd be literally people out in the freezing cold weather for 8 hours. I think that Trump made the right decision. I'm kind of disappointed they're not going to have the parade. Usually the president goes from the Capitol, then gets in that parade, and it's that kind of iconic thing, goes right down the Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House. They're not going to be able to do that because of security reasons as well. And also just having all those people outside, not a good idea. By the way, the last time this happened, and I was there, believe it or not, in 1984, exactly. That would be exactly 20 years ago, 40 years ago, if my math is correct. And so I'm getting old, folks, so I have a hard time doing the math. So anyway, the that's the situation. We're waiting to get Mick Mulvaney on the line. He will be on soon. Mick Mulvaney was the former former chief of staff. Do we have Mick Mulvaney on, Mr. Producer? Okay. So we will get that for you in just a minute. In the meantime, while we wait for Mick Mulvaney to come on, I wanted to mention 2 or 3 quick things, and then we will go with Mick Mulvaney. One is I hope that everyone is getting the Unleash Prosperity Hotline. Are you getting it? I mean, if you're not getting it, why aren't you getting it? I mean, why are you not getting the hotline? The hotline, by the way, is free. It costs you nothing. It's an little economic scorecard newsletter that comes out every morning. Very popular. Members of Congress read it. CEOs read it. Newt Gingrich says it's the first thing he reads every morning. So you've got to get it. Just go to unleashprosperity.com. unleashprosperity.com. Sign up. It costs you nothing. It's free. And we want you to have it so you can be the smartest person in the room. But the other thing, have we got Mick Mulvaney on yet? Yep. We got Mick. Are you there?
I'm here. If that's your question for me, yes. Hi, good morning.
Hi, Mick. Thanks so much. I know how busy you are, and so it's great to have you. By the way, Mick Mulvaney, former member of Congress from South Carolina, then had the privilege and did an amazing job of serving as Donald Trump's chief of staff. Mick, I don't know how you did it. How do you be the chief of staff for that guy? Because he goes like, what? Is it true? He goes like 18 hours a day?
It's actually closer to 20. I tell people he only slept about 4 o'clock. Now it's a true story because when I took the gig, I don't know what you want to talk about, how much time we've got, but when I took the gig, I was the 3rd chief of staff, and I'd worked with him for 2 years already. I knew.
You were the budget director. You were the budget director. Yes,
and that made me unique, right? Because Reince didn't really know him that well. Reince Priebus, before he took the gig, John Kelly hadn't spent that much time with him, but I spent 2 years with him. And I knew one of the challenges was the man never sleeps. He went to bed every night about 2 a.m. and got up about 6. And I said, boss, look, I can't do that. And nobody can do it. You're the only person I know who can do that. So here's what we'll do is I'll work from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, and then I'll have a team come in at noon that works till 2 a.m., and they'll cover it. And he's like, that's great. And we got along. He only ever called me, I think, one time, Steve, after hours. It was great. He was a great boss.
By the way, can I just interrupt for a second? I know that's true because, occasionally, Trump would call me because I work with him. He liked me, and sometimes he'd want advice on things. And sometimes, especially during the campaigns, he'd call me at like 1 a.m. Steve, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, like most people, I'm in bed.
Yeah, he did call me one time about 11:30, and I think he just and I answered the phone, was groggy, and he immediately apologized because he realized that he had called the wrong person at the wrong. He never. If I got 8 hours sleep, I was fine. If I did.
So what time would he get into the Oval Office?
Oh, now see, that's interesting. He came down. He got up about 6 and would watch all the morning news programs, and he would read the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal cover to cover every single day. And that was his prep. And he came down about 11. Down about 11 o'clock. So I'm
glad to hear that, by the way, because I have a column in the New York Post, so I'm glad he's reading.
And I have joined you on that. They started that this year. They were very nice and give me a column twice a month. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and so that was an amazing. You lasted 2 years.
Well, I was 2 years. I was a year at OMB by myself, or as the only job. Then I did a year at OMB and at the CFPB at the same time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then I went and I did about 15 months as chief of staff, and then I was envoy to Northern Ireland during COVID. But that I only got over there for like 3 or 4 days before we shut down. Yeah.
So how do you think? What do you think is going to be different, Mick, from this term from the last term? Because I was saying earlier on the show that I think people are, I think when Trump came in 2016, people were kind of fearful of what Trump might do because he was kind of unknown, and he a lot of people were worried about what he might do. And I think that fear, instead of being fearful, I think Americans are now hopeful of what he will do. But how do you see this term being different from his second term? I mean, from the term that he served from 2016 to 2020.
There's a bunch of different ways to answer. I get asked that question a lot. There's a bunch of different ways to answer. But let me tell you one that just hit me in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
As I was watching some of Kristi Noem's confirmation hearings, and then before her, all of the hearings that went on this week, I was stunned, Steve, by the willingness of the nominees to stand up for themselves and for the policies. I mean, I got to tell you, I was Senate confirmed in 2017, and I was told by the Trump team at that point, okay, which was not really a Trump team, it was sort of a mix of Trump and RNC and who knows what, don't pick any fights, don't make any news, keep your head down, get confirmed, and just move on from there. And we saw the exact opposite this week. It was great to see Sam Bondi push back. And even Scott Bessent, for goodness sakes. I mean, I don't know Scott that well. I've met him a couple of times, but when he got asked about, a clean energy race, he was assertive in pushing the policies of the Trump team, and that's invigorating to me. I was excited by that. It means they're not embarrassed. They're not afraid. I gave one of the reasons I think the president hired me as the chief of staff was he saw my budget presentation back in 17. And I think you would even comment it was one of the most assertive defenses of conservatism they'd seen in a long time. That's what everybody's doing now. That's what he wants. There's no fear. There's no shyness about, look, we ran on these policies. We won on these policies. We are going to do these policies. Elections have consequences, and I thought it was great. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I thought I didn't watch all the confirmation hearings, but I did watch Scott Bessent and a couple of others, and I agreed with you. I think they didn't back down. They weren't obsequious. They were basically saying, "Here's what we're going to do," because we were elected to do these things. And I thought that assertiveness was a breath of fresh air because. And by the way, I thought the Democrats looked terrible. It was all gotcha. Just. They weren't even trying to get interesting information out of these folks. They were just trying to get them to trip up. And I hate that about Washington.
I do too. And it hits home for me because, of course, when I was chief of staff, we'd walk down to Capitol Hill all the time and try and get our stuff voted on. And we're always told by the senators, we just don't have enough time. Senate time. It's so precious. We don't have that much time in the Senate. Things move very slowly.
Yeah, right.
And then you watch the confirmation hearing and you see Tim Kaine from Virginia used this so-called precious Senate time to ask Pete Hegseth if he was drunk at a Christmas party in 2014. Yeah. Right. Really? I mean, is that what advise and consent is about? Is that what the deliberative body is about? So I do think look, some of the Democrats comported themselves well, and I give them credit. But for some of them, they were relitigating the election, and I wanted somebody to stand up and say, "Look, I know you believe that, but you lost." So,
by the way, I'm guilty of that. I have been drunk at Christmas parties, so I just want to be on the record on
that. And somehow I managed to get confirmed. So,
do you like him? Do you like Donald Trump?
I do. He's a tough boss to work for.
He is a tough boss. I know. That's why I ask, because I know, sometimes, when you work somebody that long, sometimes you just feel like, that son of a bitch, But
my biggest regret is that I really enjoyed playing golf with him, and I never beat the old man, which really, I'm not sure I can say how that makes me feel on the radio, but I was always, because I was a good golfer. I mean, I'm an 8 handicap. And people always say, but you let him win. And I'm like, look, I got news for you. Donald Trump doesn't hire people that let other people beat them at things. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day I had him down 1 at the 15th hole, 16th tee at Bedminster.
Wait,
and
you were beating?
I beat him.
Time out.
Oh, yeah.
You must be a really good golfer because Trump, I played with him. He's really good.
I'm an 8 handicap. He's probably a 4 or 5. He was playing good. I was playing good.
Well, by the way, he doesn't like to lose either.
Oh, shit. Excuse me. No, he doesn't. I'm sorry. Oh, goodness gracious. Sorry. No, no, he doesn't. He absolutely doesn't. But I poked him. I said, all right, old man. And he hated it when I called him that. I got you today, old man. Today's I got you. And he just looked at me because, he's about a foot taller than I am. He goes, no, you don't have a chance. And he finished birdie, par, birdie, and beat me. So, yeah, so I had fun. It's time for other. I really wish Susie Wiles the best. I hope she does very, very well. It's Susie. A tough job. It is. There's a reason. Steve, there's a reason that the average life expectancy of a chief of staff is about 15 months. Donald Trump took hell from the press because he had 4 chiefs of staff in his first term because the press is lazy and won't point out that so did Barack Obama. He had 4 as well. It's a really hard job because you're the only person who gets paid to tell the president things he doesn't want to hear. But you got to do it.
Yeah,
you got to do it.
I remember a couple of times you invited me to some of the press conferences that Trump had, and some of them were in the Rose Garden and in front of the White House. And I remember one of them it really struck me that the questions were so hostile. I mean, you could just tell these press people hated Trump, and I thought it was so disrespectful. And I'm not that kind of person. I mean, I don't know how Trump held it together. In other words, when I remember one thing he said at one of the press conferences, I'm here to answer all your questions, but I'm not going to talk about X. Well, the first 3 questions were about X, and I don't even remember what the issue was. And he said, I told you I'm not going to talk about that. But the point was, you could see the kind of seething contempt that these White House reporters had for Trump. And I just thought it was outrageous and disrespectful to the office, the way they treated Trump.
It was. The good news is, if you want to look at the silver lining, is that I think more and more people came to see it the exact same way that you and I saw it, which is exactly as you just described, which is why no one believes the left-wing press anymore. They know they're an arm of the Democrat Party. If you want to look at the silver lining, Donald Trump's first term exposed the mainstream press for what it is, which is nothing more than the voice of the Democrat Party. And now we know, right? I mean, that's
one of the things that I've got so many questions I want to ask you. By the way, Mick, can you hold over for one more? I told you I'd only have you on for about 12 minutes, but I'd love to continue.
It's a rainy winter day in South Carolina. I got just sitting here working, so happy to chat.
Okay, so one question before we take a quick break is that how was his relationship with some of these foreign leaders? A lot of the foreign leaders didn't like Trump too much either, but you saw firsthand how he dealt with presidents and prime ministers. And what is your overall reaction?
Oh, it's different for different ones. I think that the real tough guys respected him. I met with him and Kim Jong-un a couple times.
Yeah,
I was there with one of the Xi meetings. I think at least one of the Putin meetings, and you could tell. There's folks. I mean, especially Putin. I mean, a former KGB agent. He's not going to sort of wear his heart on his sleeve. But you could tell there was a respect there, if not hard to say if they like him or not. It doesn't really make much difference. At the same time, you dealt with Emmanuel Macron and Theresa May and Angela Merkel, and it was almost like dealing with the press, as you've just described it. The contempt for him was hard for them to hold back. The Europeans, many of the Western Europeans, couldn't stand it. Now, Boris was good. Theresa May wasn't. So now it was different for different folks, but that's life. People are different.
So people say though that he kind of wasn't tough enough with Putin and with the president of North Korea, Kim Il-sung. That's a criticism I've heard of Trump, but I wonder, is that a fair criticism?
Was anybody tougher on China than Trump? I mean,
good point.
What would happen is, the press would ask him, well, what are you going to do to beat up on Putin? And Trump, I know what he's thinking in the back of his mind, because it's the same thing that any business person would think is, what am I going to gain by telling this reporter how I really feel? It goes back to the old, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. What am I going to gain in my negotiations with President Xi by beating my chest to CBS News? It's just not going to happen. So he was playing the longer game, trying to figure out how to handle the negotiation, as opposed to coddling up to a press that was never going to accept him anyway.
I think what you're saying is he's crazy as a fox. And by the way, I'm talking to Mick Mulvaney. We're going to take a quick break. The former chief of staff of Donald Trump, who is one of my heroes, has agreed to stick on for a few more minutes. So we'll be back with Mick Mulvaney in one moment.
What you're hearing is Hardie Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that helps resist weather damage, no matter what Mother Nature throws its way. James Hardie knows how important a reputation is, especially when you're a home builder. That's why Hardie products withstand the elements better than wood-based siding, with styles to match their strength. Because when home builders work with us, we deliver our best so they can look their best. Protect your reputation with exterior products by James Hardie.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Hello, folks. This is the More Money Show. Welcome back. I have on as a guest, I'm really so proud to have the distinguished Mick Mulvaney, who served very faithfully as Donald Trump's chief of staff. Were you his second or third chief of staff, Mick?
Third. It was Reince Priebus, John Kelly, me, and then Mark Meadows.
Yeah, wow. And so we're just having fun reminiscing of what that must have been like to be in the Oval Office with Donald J. Trump. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was you did, just to go back for the people who are just joining us, you had served as the budget director for Trump. And just so folks know, the budget director is the one who is responsible for coming up with a federal budget that hopefully will eventually balance. You came out with some pretty tough budgets. I really admired you for that. But Mick, we didn't make a lot of progress in cutting spending, and that's the one.
Oh, listen, Steve, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I can't give any names because the folks are still around in D.C., but, I did the budget in 2017.
Yeah, it was a great budget.
President called great budget. Thank you. I appreciate that. The Wall Street Journal said it was the most Reagan-esque, where it actually talking about balancing. And I get a call from the Oval Office and says, come on down, President wants to see you. So I hadn't been down there very often. I come down, and it's the President of the Oval Office and a very, very high-ranking Republican senator. You can fill in the blank on guessing whoever that might be.
I know. Okay.
And the President looks at he says, Mick, Senator so-and-so think very much about your budget. And he looks at the senator and says, tell Mick what you just told me. He says, well, Mr. President, we all have a lot of respect for Mr. Mulvaney. He's really good with numbers. He's one of the best guys in town on budgets and so forth. But look, you're elected and he's not. No one has ever lost their job in this town for spending too much money. They have lost their job.
I know who you're talking about. Okay,
they have lost their job for not spending
enough.
And
he really did say that.
Yeah, absolutely said it to the president right in front of me.
Yeah.
So when the Republicans are saying that in the Senate,
I know. How
do you expect the Republican president? And keep in mind, Congress spends the money, which means that Donald Trump would have had to veto Republican spending bills. And that's really hard to do.
It is. So that brings me to your protege, and that is Russ Vought. Russ Vought worked for you right before he became budget director, isn't that right?
One of my favorite guys in Washington. You have no idea. I talked to Russ a couple times.
Yeah, I thought so. So he is now putting. Yeah, so Russ Vought is now putting together the. And by the way, I thought he was sensational in his testimony before the Senate in his confirmation hearing. He there's a guy who doesn't back down. And by the way, you know what's so wonderful about those kind of, and yours was the same way. I always said that in Washington, knowledge is power. So if you know more about an issue than, the person who's grilling you, you've got an upper hand. And it was so clear both with your confirmation and Russ's that both of you knew so much more about the budget than these guys do, that you both ran circles around them. But Russ did an amazing job at that hearing. But Russ is going to come forward with a budget very soon. And I think it'll also be a Reaganite budget. But I'm worried about whether Republicans are going to do the same thing and just, dead on arrival.
Yes. And that's a real risk. Here's the difference. First of all, and look, I'm a big fan of the DOGE group.
Me too.
Not because I don't think they're going to be particularly successful, just because it's really hard to change Washington. But they're going to make fiscal issues, conservative issues, civil service reform, they're going to bring it front and center. I describe it as one of the most important PR campaigns in Washington history. I beat the drum. Russ and I were beating the drum about spending and civil service reform and the size of the government. And, nobody cared because it wasn't really that sexy. Now people care about it. Elon Musk is better at this than I am. He's smarter than I am. And if they can figure out a way to bring this to the forefront to where the American public start demanding change. Keep in mind, we had proposed reforms of the federal government and had our own cabinet secretaries undermining us. I remember the Secretary of Defense tried to undo what we tried to do with the Army Corps of Engineers. So you had people pulling in all sorts of different directions. Because of DOGE, I think everybody's pulling the same direction. So I do think there's a chance we might make some progress.
Well, I also think, by the way, my guest is Mick Mulvaney, the former budget director for Donald Trump and the former chief of staff. So there's very few people alive who know more about Trump's business and presidential habits than Mick Mulvaney. Mick, Trump, do you think that Trump wants to cut the budget? I mean, I got the sense that he kind of, after that meeting that you talked about with Senator McConnell, that he just kind of threw in the towel and said, okay, nobody's going to cut the budget. And so we're just going to let it.
I mean, I was sitting there asking him to spend less. Russ Vought was asking him to spend less. but leadership in the House, leadership in the Senate, were not only asking him to spend more, they were sending him bills that spent more.
I know. And the dirty little secret of Washington is you discovered, because I remember when you first came to Washington, that's when you and I met at a meeting when you were a freshman in Congress. And, we all come in with a naivete that Republicans are the good guys on the budget and Democrats are the bad guys. And then you realize, hey, there are a lot of Republicans who are not good guys on the budget.
I remember walking over to the budget committee one day, and there was one of the old bulls, and you know what that means.
Yeah,
I do. Been there forever. He said, "Oh, you're Mulvaney. Welcome." I guess, you Tea Party guys. I love you guys. You fiscal hawks. There was a bunch of you guys around with Reagan in the '80s, and then y'all left, and I was still here. And a bunch of them came in with Newt. We're going to balance the budget, blah blah blah. And they all left, and I'm still here, and now you're here. And pretty soon you're going to be gone, and I'll still be here. And I'm gone, and he's still there.
So, Mick, we just have 2 or 3 minutes left, and I appreciate so much you holding over for a few extra minutes. But tell me your favorite fun story about Donald Trump when you were with him in the Oval Office. I was with you, invited me over many times and had so many interesting meetings with Trump in the Oval Office. And he's a funny guy, and he's a lively guy. And I wonder if any parting comments about some of your remembrances of being in the Oval Office and doing the job with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I can't do it in 2 minutes. I'll give you the short version of one of my favorite times to work for him was the time we were flying to the G20 in Osaka, Japan, and he tweeted out, how cool would it be to stop off and see Kim Jong-un on the way back at the DMZ? And Mike Pompeo was on the flight with me. We looked at each other. There's no way that's going to happen. And 26 hours later, it was happening.
That's
Trump
amazing.
Being Trump. It was fantastic. Listen, he said he's not the easiest guy in the world to work for, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
One thing that story, exemplifies, and maybe a final comment on this, is that one of the things that's really impressed me about Donald Trump is that he thinks outside the box. And so many times he'll come up with these ideas, like on Greenland, that why don't we just purchase Greenland? And why didn't we think of that before? But anyway, I love the fact that he's just not orthodox in his thinking, that he's big thinker. And sometimes his big ideas are not great ideas, but sometimes he comes up with brilliant ideas that nobody else thought of.
I didn't have Greenland on my bingo card. I didn't have Kim Jong-un at the DMZ on my bingo card. But
exactly.
All in all, it was pretty productive. And I'm really looking forward to the next 4 years. I can't tell you how excited I am. You're right. There's an optimism here, even more so than there was 8 years ago.
Mick Mulvaney, you are an American hero. Thanks so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you again. And by the way, you write a weekly column now for New York Post?
Twice a month for the Post and once a week for The Hill in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Well, great columns. I love seeing your stuff. Folks, that's Mick Mulvaney. And now we'll take a few questions. We already have some callers. I'm going to sporadically throughout the next hour and a half take your calls on the More Money Show. 1-800-848-9222 is the number. It's 1-800-848-WABC. And Mr. Producer, who is our first caller? Oh, okay, you are on.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi.
You're on, sir.
Hi, Steve. First-time caller. Love the show. Been listening for about 6 months. But let me just get
thank
right
you
to
so
the
much.
Point. I am an independent voter. Was a registered Democrat. And
did you vote? I don't want to. I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer if you want, because your vote is secret and private. But if you care to answer this, did you vote for Trump this time around? And you don't have to answer if you don't want.
I prefer not to.
Okay, so go ahead. All right.
Here's what I'd like to touch upon. It's something you touched upon. The issue of immigration and deportation.
Yes. What do we do about this? I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what the right solution is.
I share in your consternation and your concern about how this is going to be handled. I think the mandate from the electorate is to unequivocally deport criminal aliens.
Yes.
However, when you start talking about quasi-internment camps and rounding up women and children, that's not something I want to see. The mandate of the public is, I don't believe the mandate of the electorate is to do that. And if
I agree with you.
Too far, and if Trump goes too far, there's going to be big problems, because I think the Democrats are just waiting for that to happen. That'll be splashed all over the media, You'll have pictures and videos and show.
No, I think it's a very good point. You share the very same concern that I do, and I appreciate just in a minute I have left with you. So, what do you do then about a person who is illegally in the country? They may be doing productive things, they may be on the job, but if we're just going to let them stay, then you're just going to invite more illegal immigrants into the country.
I think you do two things. I think that you seal the border, and I think that people are going to call it amnesty, but the vast majority of these people are good people who just want to work in this country.
I agree.
Just like my ancestors who came 100 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you think a lot like I do. I mean, I am very pro-immigrant. If they want to come to this country and share our freedoms and work hard and build a future, that's what America's about. It's a real conundrum because if you let them stay, then you're just going to let more illegal immigrants come in, and you're going to encourage more illegal immigration. But if you force them out in a way that is not going to look good for the country either. So I'm very undecided about this. Thanks for the call. We'll try to slip in one more call before we have to take a break. Who have we got next? Tony, thanks for calling.
Hey, Steve, thank you. That was a fantastic interview with Mick Mulvaney.
Mick Mulvaney is amazing. I mean, to have that chance to be in the Oval Office every day with Donald Trump, I would pay to do that job.
Yeah, so you were talking about TikTok. And
yes.
I just think it's dangerous for our government to ban apps, because what's next? They're going to ban X when the opposing side is in. You know what I'm saying? I think a better answer would be to restrict the apps from capturing personal data and have a heavy penalty, like in the billions, if they do something like that.
It's a good solution, Tony. I like that. I'm with you. I think that this is a free country. I think people, obviously, we have to be attentive to the national security concerns. And by the way, I have to confess, I'm not a national security expert, so I don't get all the potential conflicts with our national security with respect to China and TikTok. But my feeling, I'm tired of people saying, oh, this is bad for the kids or this or that. And I'm like, I don't want the government to be the nanny state. This is why we have something called parents. Parents are the one who are supposed to regulate what their kids are watching, whether it's on TV or whether it's on their phone screen. And if you're concerned about what your kids are watching on their phone, take the damn phone away from them. But I don't want the government playing the role of the nanny state. I'm just sick of that. So any final word before we move on, Tony?
No, keep up the good work. I love listening
good call.
to you on that.
Good call, sir. One more. Do we have anyone else waiting? Hector, by the way, before I get to Hector, I want to remind people our number for the More Money hotline is 1-800-848-9222. Hector, what have you got for us? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, sir. Thanks for calling.
Steve, Mr. Mnuchin, doesn't he own or bought a bank?
I think he is in the banking business. Mick, you're talking about Mnuchin. Yeah,
Mr. Mnuchin. What I'm thinking is this: would it be possible for his bank to issue a credit card that says MAGA? MAGA, right? And every time you use the credit card,
idea.
some of the money that's generated in fees or whatever goes to the MAGA movement.
Well, that's a very interesting. I know Mnuchin a bit. Steve and I worked together on the on the transition in 2016, and he's a smart guy. He's made gazillions of dollars. He's a great businessman. So I'm going to take him up with that. I wonder how many people would like a MAGA credit card. Great point. 800-848-9222 is our More Money hotline. I guess we have time. We got 2 minutes. Can we squeeze in one more? Okay, you're on.
Yes, hello.
Yes, I've literally got 90 seconds, so we got to go fast.
Got it. 90 seconds, real quick. 7-year plan for immigration. You can meet at the border. We have a guest worker program.
Yep.
What you do is every year they have to go back. So they come into the country. You get a work permit, good for a year. After that year is up, you must return to your home country 2 weeks.
Yep. Well, we have a program like that. We have a temporary worker visa program. I got literally 30 seconds left. Anything else?
Okay, 30 seconds left. Yes, the women and children that are in.
Yep.
Once they're identified,
yep.
What you end up doing is you give them quick court dates, hire a bunch of judges, and if they have a valid claim, they stay. If they don't, they go back.
I like it. Okay, thank you so much for the call, folks.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. We're having some fun on a Saturday afternoon. We're on from 1 to 3 p.m. every Saturday on WABC and many affiliated stations around the country. Thanks so much for joining. I feel so privileged to be in front of this microphone, to be able to talk to you. I always tell people, and I ain't lying, that we have the smartest audience in all of talk radio, and I learn so much from hearing from you, and that's why we have open lines. By the way, we are live. We are in color. All the other stations are just going to give you some canned stuff that you've already heard before. You're probably going to get these infomercials that go on forever. We're live. We're in color. We're taking your calls. We want to hear from you. I want to hear from you about the inauguration. This is a big, big, big weekend. It only happens once every 4 years, and we have an incredible new president coming in. I am so excited. I've got goosebumps. I really do. I cannot wait for Trump to come in and fix our country. Our country's in a lot of trouble. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer 2 days before the inauguration, but our country is in a deep hole. We're running deficits of $2 trillion a year. It's getting worse, not better. The first 3 months of the fiscal year, we borrowed $200 billion more than we did last year under Biden, and Biden's record last year was a record high for deficits. So it's an awful picture with respect to our budget. You look at what's happening with inflation rate. It's rising again. It's not falling. Biden has not solved Biden and inflation. That's going to take Trump to do, and that may take a few months to get that in order. We've got taxes that are scheduled to go up. Trump has to fix that. We're the laughingstock of the world after what happened in Afghanistan. We have to get back America's prestige in the world. We are not energy independent any longer, thanks to Biden's war on American energy. We have to turn that around. We have regulations that are costing our country $2 trillion a year. It's like a second tax that you pay. Our small businesses are really struggling because they also face higher prices. So a lot of work to be done. And we need to look, I hope, and don't laugh, I really think Trump has an opportunity to unify the country. Remember, it was exactly 4 years ago, Biden said he was going to unite the country, and he did nothing to unite the country. He played a script that was written by the far left of this country, and we are a center-right country. We're not a center-left country, and that's why we booted these people out of office. So Trump has his work cut out, and I said probably a month ago, I probably misspoke because I said, well, the economy's just going to be roaring right from the start. And I don't think that's the case, frankly. I think it's going to take a while for Trump's policies to set in, for people to see it is a new morning in America, for the economy to really start booming. But it will boom. I saw that under Reagan. When Reagan came in, reversed all the crazy policies of Jimmy Carter, but it took Reagan 14 months to get the economy moving again. So I think that Trump will be able to get the economy moving again, and give us 3 to 6 months, okay? Give us 3 to 6 months, and I think you're going to see real improvement in all of these trends. We are going to get rid of the criminal aliens. One of the questions I'm asking my great audience today, all of you, is what do you think we do about, do you want to see mass deportations? I do not. I do not want to see them. I want to get rid of the troublemakers. I want to get rid of the bad guys, the ones who are wearing the black hats, the ones who are causing mayhem, the drug runners, the criminals, the people who come in just to go on welfare. No, that's why you're coming to this country, you are out of here. But I struggle with, and I don't know the answer. We've had some good callers already on this, is what do we do about the people who came in across the border illegally, but they're working, they're paying their taxes, but they're not supposed to be here. Do we deport them? Do we deport 8 million people? I don't know if I'm in favor of that, but I want to hear what anybody have a good solution for this problem, because I can't figure out what that solution is. And I know if you can come up with a good solution, I will get that solution to the Trump people. I promise. So much else going on. I have come around to this idea that, when I first heard it, I kind of laughed about the idea of the United States purchasing or annexing Greenland. But the more I look into this, the more I think there's something, Trump thinks outside the box. I had Mick Mulvaney on. If you're just joining, Mick Mulvaney was a chief of staff for Trump when he was in the White House, lasted longer than anybody else. I think he was there 18 months, which is a long time to be chief of staff for Donald Trump, because he just wears people out. But, one of the things that Mick Mulvaney was telling us is that Trump does think outside the box. And he's thinking outside the box on this, that we should take over Greenland. And so here is the thing that I think is interesting. If you look at something called Seward's Folly, for those of you who know the history books, this was I think he was Lincoln's, was he Lincoln's Secretary of State? Tim Desher, my producer, is here, and okay, that was 1863, was it? When was Seward's Folly? So everybody laughed. For you, those who don't know your history, he was the one who purchased Alaska. Do you know how much?
1867.
Oh, and how much did we pay for Alaska?
$7.2 million.
We paid $7.2 million. That's about a day's worth of oil we get out of one of our oil crews out there in Alaska. And so my point is, people laughed when he did it. Said, why would anybody want to buy Alaska? Well, we did buy Alaska. By the way, Alaska's huge. It's gigantic in size. And it was approved by the Senate. 37-2. So I'm going through my own history book to remind me about this. And so Greenland is a gigantic, it's not, by the way, the joke about Greenland is it's not green and it's not land. It's mostly ice and it isn't green. Why do they call it Greenland? I can never understand that. There's not a lot of grass in Greenland, but it is strategically important. They probably have oil there. They are strategic in terms of, a buffer between Russia and China. And so let's do it. I like this idea. And by the way, here's another thing, since we're just having fun today. There is a massive, about a 20-mile area down the coast of Mexico, right on the U.S.-Mexico border. And I don't exactly know what that region is called, but I do know this. This is some of the most beautiful oceanfront property in the world. And imagine that we bought from Mexico 25, 30, 50 miles of that coastline. Can you imagine what that would be worth if the American flag were planted in that region? It would be more expensive than the property in San Diego. So, hey, why don't we do that? I'm going to give Donald Trump that idea because I think it makes a lot of sense. So we're gonna take your calls. The More Money hotline today is 1-800-848-9222. I want to hear from you about whether you think any of these ideas make sense, and I also want to hear from Democrats. If you're a Democrat, tell our call operator that you're a Democrat, and because I want to hear what you want to hear from Donald Trump. In other words, what would convince you, if you're a Democrat, that Trump is not all bad and that he can do things that can make our country strong and great again? I think he can do it, but I would really welcome the opportunity to talk to you. 1-800-848-9222. Last thing I want to mention before we take our break is I'm very concerned about Republicans who want to raise tax rates. No. We do not raise tax rates. If we want to broaden the tax base, I'm all for that. Get rid of loopholes, get rid of all the special interest deductions. But no, we want a low flat rate tax in this country that does not punish people for being successful, because you have such disincentive effects. You're riding the wrong way on the Laffer curve when you raise tax rates. So we have Republicans who want to raise tax rates. Really bad idea. Close the loopholes, get government spending under control. It is out of control, folks. Spending is up 11% this year over last year, 11%. What is going on in this country? Are we trying to bankrupt the country? Is that what, and by the way, why is Biden spending every single nickel and quarter and dime he can get his hands on when we're already running a $2 trillion deficit? So a lot of work to be done. Donald Trump is not inheriting a strong economy. He is inheriting a faltering economy that needs a new mega injection of deregulation, lower taxes, a strong national defense that doesn't make us a laughingstock. As Reagan used to say, I want to be feared, not loved. And then on top of that, we're going to need to have an energy policy that produces every single drop of oil and gas and coal that we can get our hands on, so we don't have to be dependent on other countries. Okay, I will be right back. I'm excited. You can tell. You can hear it in my voice. I cannot wait. I am going to be at all the parties this weekend, and I'm just so. I was so. By the way, can you imagine how we would feel right now? Really think about this. If Kamala Harris had won this election and we were going to be inaugurating Kamala Harris, can you imagine that? I mean, the country would be in the biggest funk ever. We would be in a mental depression. I don't know if we'd be in an economic depression, but we would certainly be in a mental depression. So thank God that Donald Trump won this election and that he is coming in with a Make America Great Again, Put America First agenda. Excited. I hope you are. And if you're a Democrat, I want to hear from you. What do you want Donald Trump? What would make you a fan of Donald Trump if he did whatever you recommend? We'll be right back. This is the More Money Show on WABC. And by the way, that 1-800 number, just one last time, 1-800-848-9222. We'll be taking your calls. Bye.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
We're back, folks. This is the More Money Show, having a lot of fun this Saturday afternoon and getting ready for an important inauguration for a great man, Donald Trump. And I'm excited. I will be there. I can't wait for that oath of office to be taken. And Donald Trump's going to run right into the Capitol, start signing executive orders that reverse a lot of crazy things that Joe Biden did to our economy. But in the meantime, I've on the phone line, I invited my friend Rainier Zeitman, who is one of the world's best economic historians, and who has got a great new book that I just found to be fascinating called The Origins of Poverty and Wealth. A great book about what's happening all over the world. Rainier, thanks so much for joining. I think you're in Germany?
Yes, I'm in Berlin right now.
Oh, well, it's awesome to have you. I love your book. It is such an important discovery of what's happening in the world, who's getting it right, who's getting it wrong. So, Rainier, let me first ask you, because you sent me an article the other day, and you write about this in your book about what's going on in Vietnam. And you, according to this article you sent me, Vietnam is moving towards Trumpism.
Yes, maybe this is a little bit exaggerated, but there's more than a kernel of truth. You know, they call themselves communists, and
yes,
they call their country socialist. But this is crazy. You know, I've been there several times. I was invited to universities, and it's much easier to find a Marxist at the university in the United States or in Europe than in Vietnam, because they know what socialism means. And, you know, the story with Vietnam is this. In the beginning of the 90s, Vietnam was the poorest country in the world. You know, first they had the war not only with the United States,
yes,
they were in war with France, with Japan, with China. And what was not destroyed by the war was destroyed then by the planned economy that they introduced. So they were really the poorest country in the world, poorer than all African countries in the beginning of the 90s. Then they started with pre-market reforms. They introduced private property. They called it Doi Moi reforms. And the result is that the number of people living in poverty in Vietnam decreased from 80% to 3%. And
wow. No, wait. Hold on, Reinier. Is that in Vietnam?
In Vietnam.
Wow, that's amazing.
Number of people
that's incredible.
Living in poverty reduced from 83%. So and now I want to add something. What is very, very important. I think you work also for the Heritage Foundation.
Yes, that's right.
And they have every year this Index of Economic Freedom. I think the next one will be published. I think next month or in a few weeks.
That's right.
So, and I studied this Index of Economic Freedom, and I compare always what happened over longer periods. That you started in 1995, and if you compare 1995 to today, there's no country with comparable size that gained so much scores in the Index of Economic Freedom as Vietnam. I'll give you one comparison. Wow. The United States lost 6 points since 1995.
Yes.
Vietnam gained 21 points. 21 points. The only other big country that gained as many points is Poland. And so I wrote this book about Poland and Vietnam. Yes, Poland and Vietnam are the two countries that gained most. And I think this proves that economic freedom is the only way to reduce poverty. So first,
my gosh.
I spoke about Vietnam, but let me mention also Poland.
Well, hold on. Time out, Reinier, because this is such an important message. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, because you've got this important book that no one else has ever looked at all this data from all over the world. The book, again, is called The Origins of Poverty and Wealth. And if you want to understand how to create economic prosperity, this is a great book to explain it. And what Reinier is telling us is that it's amazing, actually, when you think about it, that Vietnam and was it Hungary or Poland? Poland. So these are two countries that were communist and they were, dirt poor. And they have since then moved from socialism to economic freedom and free market capitalism. And they have had, if I understand you correctly, the fastest rate of growth and the biggest reduction in poverty because they moved towards economic freedom. And economic freedom, just so people understand because I've read the book, I think it's fantastic. That means low tax rates, cutting government spending and control over the economy, reducing regulations, sound money, free trade. All of these things create wealth and they make even the poorest people richer. Is that right?
Absolutely. This is correct to repeat it because it's so unbelievable. The number of people living in poverty in Vietnam was reduced from 80% to 3%. This is what happened. And, of course, it's not full capitalism, but there's nowhere in the world full capitalism. In the United States, it's not a full capitalism. You have a lot of socialism also, and we in Europe also. It's a mixed system between capitalism and socialism as almost everywhere in the world. But what the important thing is, what you have to look at, and what I do as a historian, I compare it with a test tube with two ingredients, market and state, capitalism and socialism. And then you watch what happens if you add more market or what happens if you add more state. And this is exactly what happened in Vietnam. They added more market, and now they want to go on. This is the news. Bloomberg had it last week. In Bloomberg, they had this headline that they follow now Elon Musk and Javier Milei. Maybe it's exaggerated, but they understood in Vietnam that the only way to go forward is reducing the role of the government. And why is this important? I've been not only several times in Vietnam, but also in China. And in China, we had also a very good development starting in the beginning of the 80s with Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms.
Right.
This is I have a friend at the Beijing University, and people in the West, they don't understand what happens there in China. He told me always, our success was not because of the state, but in spite of the state. They reduced, the role of the government and introduced private property and free market. The bad thing, what happened in China since Xi Jinping is there in the last 10 years, they go back now to more government and less market. This is the problem. But if you compare Vietnam and China, for example, China now has officially a growth rate of 5% last year. Vietnam has more than 7%. So I hope that in Vietnam that they will not make the same mistake as China did, because this is what happens. This is what my book is about.
Got it. So, Vernier, we are a show called More Money, where we try to make money for our listeners, and a lot of them are investors. So here's what I want to ask you in our remaining minutes. And by the way, the name of Vernier's book is called The Origins of Poverty and Wealth. Let me just ask you one, before I get to what countries to invest in. I want to tell you that we had an item in our hotline that we put out every day, where we noted this week that Germany's economy is in a lot of trouble. It's going the wrong way. They've had 2 years of negative growth, and I don't understand. And by the way, I think Angela Merkel was one of the worst chancellors of Germany ever. And why is Germany going in the way of socialism?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. It started with Angela Merkel, and you see what happens. She restructured our energy industry in the direction of a planned economy. For example, to phase out nuclear power plants. And this is crazy because, the official politics in Germany is that climate change should have absolute priority. But if you believe in all this stuff with climate change, you should have, of course, more nuclear power plants and not less. They phased out nuclear power plants. Or another thing, they forbid fracking, and now they import LNG fracking gas from the United States, what is, of course, great for the United States, but ridiculous for Germany to forbid it and then to import. And they import also electricity from dirty coal power plants from East European countries. And now what they did, the next thing, they call it for our automotive industry, they ban now in the European Union the combustion engines, so that in the future it will be only allowed to drive with electric vehicles. And I said it some years before, if you do this, it's an attack on the heart of the German economy, because we were always proud about our Mercedes, BMW, and Volkswagen, and now they destroy it. There are 10,000 of people who are that they had to fire from this big German automotive industries, because it's all ideology driven. And this is the lesson. The Germans are so crazy. They wanted to be role models for the world. They want to show, we are the champions in climate change, and we shown out the rest of the world how to do it. But now we are not role models, only in negative sense, as a warning for every other country what you shouldn't do.
Yes, what you shouldn't do. Okay, so we just got a few minutes remaining, Vernier, and I appreciate your calling in from Germany to tell us about what's going on all over the world. So I want your advice, and my listeners would love your advice about give me 3 or 4 countries, if you would, that you think are headed in the right direction and that are moving towards economic freedom where people should invest in.
Of course, first, Argentina.
Argentina, yes. So Milei is doing all the right things, right, in Argentina?
I'm proud because I was there 2020, 22, 23, 24. I was there every year. I studied the Milei movement from the beginning. Yes. I think I was the first one who said here in Europe he can win. And it's amazing what he did. And I had some friends who invested there in the last year, and they made a lot of money. They invested especially in banks. I think it's great what he does. Of course, we have here the leftist media who tell us that there is increasing poverty. yes, in the beginning, poverty increased. This is always if you do free market reform.
Okay, all right. So it's Argentina. I get it. We like Argentina. We love Argentina. Give me one or two other countries where you think you're very bullish on.
Think about Vietnam. I mentioned this. Think about Vietnam. I would say also Poland, but the problem with Poland is they go in a good direction, but Poland is linked very close to Germany. And if we got problems,
that's a problem.
We have problems. This is so. I would think about Argentina and Vietnam.
Okay. Hey, Ranier, thanks so much I would love to have you on again because you're teaching us a lot as investors of where to steer clear of and where to put your money. And Vietnam, Poland sounds good. And of course, Argentina, all three of those countries moving in the right direction. Let's have you on in another couple of weeks and let us know of the developments. Germany, I'm not high on Germany. I don't think you are either. Same with China. That is Ranier Zeitman. His book is The Origins of Wealth and Poverty. Thanks so much, Ranier. And I want to get to one or two callers before we have to take our break. Who is next in line, Mr. Producer? Okay, go ahead. You are on.
Hi, yeah. Yes, Steve, thank you for having me on, and thanks for the show. It's very, very good. Yeah, my comments are about TikTok and any of these social media platforms and the risks that they have that we might not know about. But I did want to talk about, your feeling about Trump's election. Just a quick comment. It's not only happiness, but we now have permission to be happy, and there's a lot less misery floating around.
That is true.
Just people around. I wear Trump shirts, Trump hats. People now are not afraid to come up and talk to me and connect with me. That's all changed.
Right. Hold on. You mean, hold on. You mean you like when you go out in public, you wear Trump shirts?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Trump hat, Trump shirt.
Because it used to be, by the way, if you did that, you could get attacked.
Yes. And it never bothered me before. And I always had to have eyes on the back of my head. But now people would be afraid to come up and acknowledge you.
I know.
Now they more readily come up and acknowledge you. And that's the misery factor is gone.
I
now
completely agree.
And
also
again.
It's a really good point you're making. I mean, I remember one time I was wearing a Trump thing, I think it was a hat or something. Literally, I was walking down the street and some guy just cold cocked me, just right on the cheek. And so, people were afraid to even, wear a Trump shirt or something or a MAGA hat. Now you can do it with pride, and you're not going to you still have to worry a little bit, but really great point. I think that's an excellent point. Okay, let's try to slip in one more call before we have to take our break. Who is next?
I want to talk about TikTok, Steve.
Okay,
TikTok.
Hurry up. I'll give you 60 seconds.
Yeah, very simple. These social media platforms are collecting an immense amount of data, and the amount of data they collect can be used to dissect and reverse engineer people's taste preferences and so forth. So the question is not necessarily TikTok, but any social media platform.
Right. You think that their access, great call. Thanks so much for calling. So it's 2-2 right now. 2 people have called in and said they're pro TikTok. 2 people have called in. And Tim, my producer, is very, very concerned about the data collection issue. So, all right, one more quick call. Before we got literally 90 seconds left. Who's next? Okay, you're on.
Maureen from New Jersey.
Yeah, Maurice.
Maureen, it's a woman. I'm a woman.
Yes, you are on.
Yeah.
But literally, we only have 40 seconds, so quickly.
Okay, quickly. Donald J. Trump stock versus Elon Musk Twitter. Twitter's not registered on New York Stock Exchange anymore. He talked about combining the two. What are the chances?
Sorry, what are
the chances of Elon Musk talked about combining Twitter with DG?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So look, that's a very big, real possibility that Elon Musk could combine Twitter, the old Twitter, and TikTok, and you'd have a social media powerhouse here in the United States, not owned by China. What a great idea. Okay, folks, we'll take a break right now, and we'll be right back. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC on this wonderful, wonderful inauguration weekend. Washington is all a buzz about all the good things that are coming, but I want to switch gears a little bit. We have on the line a good friend, a guy who I've known for 25 years, Bob Livingston, former congressman from the great state of Louisiana, and was in the leadership. He was one of the people who balanced the budget, by the way. He was the head of the Appropriations Committee back when the only time in my lifetime we balanced the budget is when Bob Livingston was running the budget in Congress. And so I'm always eternally grateful to him for that. But he had a story in the Wall Street Journal that I want everybody to read if you get the chance, because it sent a chill down my spine about the abuse of power in the abuse of our justice system that is going on today. And Bob, first of all, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be with you.
So tell us the story, because I think we all are going to listen to your story and think, oh, there, but the grace of God goes me. But this could happen to anyone. But thank God we have a new president with a new attorney general. But tell us what happened to you, because I think people can relate to it. And it wasn't an abuse of power, but go ahead.
Steve, you are right on the money. It has happened to far too many people. And actually, I was one of the lucky ones. We had been in business for 25 years. We'd been, excuse me, got some noise here. We had been in Congress for 22 years. As you said, I rose up and did fine in Congress. We started representing international clients in our lobbying operation. And we began very early, and if you're doing international clients, you've got to represent people under FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So I represented those folks just fine up until 2022, and all of a sudden the world changed. I got a knock on my door. 2 FBI agents.
Wait, is this a knock on your door at home?
Yeah, no, they came to my home.
Yeah.
And they said, we'd like to talk to you. Well, I'd talked to FBI agents all my life about background information on one thing or another,
sure.
Other things they're investigating, even other people.
Right.
Well, they started talking to me, and I thought it was just another one of those times when all of a sudden, after 2.5 hours of chatting with them, they hand me a search warrant. And they want everything that I had to. We had every record, every person, every conceivable bit of information and phone records that we had.
Right.
And they wanted to seize them, and so we complied. I called the attorney and I said, "Well, what's this for?" I said, "Am I a target?" And they said, "Yeah, you're a target, and we're going to charge you and charge you with felonies." Holy mackerel! I mean, it was just like right out of the bowl. It was about a 2018 issue, and this was 2022.
My
so
God.
Anyway, for the next 20 minutes.
Now, by the way, just so people understand, this was the Biden Justice Department.
Absolutely, 2022, okay. Right in the middle of it.
Okay.
And we had known that they'd gone after a friend of ours, a guy named Jeff Fortenberry, ruined his life, and ended up with no case at all. And that's still hanging over him. He lost his seat in Congress, and he was devastated, paid attorney's fees.
Yeah,
and it was just extraordinary. Anyway,
by the way,
was this one person after another?
Bob? Sorry to interrupt. Was this the FBI?
There were 2 FBI agents,
right,
and the search warrant was signed by an assistant U.S. attorney.
Wow.
Okay. So I called the assistant U.S. attorney and said, "Yeah, you're the target, and we're going to indict you, and but we want your records because we have these ideas that you might have violated the law and not paid attention, done things right according to the Foreign Agents Registration Act." So we got a couple of lawyers, and fought it for 20 months. My lawyers did a fabulous job. They just did. They filed an 88-page brief. But in the meantime, these guys, these FBI agents, go around to my employees and the attorneys, the assistant U.S. attorneys and the assistant attorney generals were interrogating my folks.
Oh my God.
One woman they cursed out completely during the interview in front of my lawyers. I wasn't there, but she'd been with us for 20 years, perfectly nice, decent, law-abiding lady, and they're cursing at her, telling her she got to change her story.
Wow.
The other guy was a guy 50 years old, never been married, just a very decent guy, a brilliant man who'd worked on the Hill in Congress under Congressman Jerry Sullivan on the Rules Committee. The guy had been he was an expert in baseball. He was an expert in politics. He was an expert in everything. Right. But he'd never probably walked across the street in a red light. He'd never ran a stop sign.
Right.
Never done anything in his life. They confronted him, told him if he knew what was good for them, for him, that he'd talk to him. Then he lives in Manassas, Virginia. The guy calls him up and says, "Look, I just happen to be in the neighborhood, and I want to stop by and talk to you." Well, and with that, he contacts us. We get a lawyer. That was just before Christmas, and the day before New Year's Eve, he goes to bed and doesn't wake up the next day. He was scared to death. And
this is awful,
Steve. This kind of stuff goes on all the time, and I'm a former prosecutor. I prosecuted people for 6 years.
I know.
But
hold on. What were they
awesome
just
power.
were they just on a fishing expedition, or did they actually have evidence against you?
They had no evidence, but it was a fishing expedition. But they thought they had enough of a case. I represent an international client, as we'd represented 28 international clients over the years, over 25 years. Never had a problem. We were religious in paying in filing our documents under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and we filed constantly, but they said we didn't file correctly, and we were hiding this and that, and even accused us of money laundering
So it sounds to me like your crime was being a Republican.
Steve, you hit it right on the head. If you look at the list of people that this Attorney General has cornered, investigated, prosecuted, whatever. They not only investigate you, they try to file charges against you. It began with General Flynn right at the outset of the first Trump administration, and it just kept on. They put Peter Navarro, the highest-ranking advisor to a president in the history of the country. They don't arrest him or even have him come into the office, and he lived a couple of blocks from the FBI headquarters. No, they wait till he gets on the plane, and they send a SWAT team and drag him off the plane.
So the reason, by the way,
Bob,
the reason that your story that's in the Wall Street Journal, you can read this, folks. Just Google Wall Street Journal Robert Livingston, and you can see the article. It's very chilling, and it especially resonated with me because I also am guilty of being a Trump economist, and I'll tell you, Bob. I mean, when Biden was first elected president, because I saw friends that I worked with who went to jail, including, you mentioned Peter Navarro. And by the way, I had disagreements with Peter Navarro, but he was just giving an economic advice to the president. Well, they put him in jail. They put, as you know, Steve Bannon went to jail. He didn't commit any crimes. You look at, so many of the people who were, as you know, on January 6th, I do believe that people went into the Capitol need to be prosecuted, but there are many people who were arrested who were just exercising their First Amendment rights.
Steve, there were thousands of people there, and yes, there were maybe a handful of people were violent or misbehaved, and they should have been prosecuted.
Yes,
but all those, they've got tons of people. They not only arrested them, charged them, convicted them in the D.C. environment, but put some of them in solitary confinement.
I know people who were in solitary, and some of them were, did nothing, and they were in jail for 7 months in the D.C. jail system, which is not a pleasant place to be.
And the public defender wouldn't represent them. I mean, it was really a bad situation, all at the hands of this very weak and inadequate attorney general.
So here's the thing.
It was a disaster.
Yes, and that's why your story was so important. I'm so glad that the Wall Street Journal ran it because, folks, the hypocrisy of the Biden people and the left saying, oh, Trump is going to be autocrat and put his political enemies in jail. No, folks, the people who did that were the Biden people. They used the law enforcement activities of the government to go after their political enemies, which, by the way, Bob, is what happens in third world country. Banana republics do that.
Tyranny,
that's not supposed to happen in America.
And what did they say? They said nobody's above the law. But Hillary Clinton never saw a day elected a charge of any sort.
Of course.
And
neither Hunter Biden either. Yeah.
Hunter, that was about to get to Hunter Biden. You're absolutely right. He has a zillion crimes. In fact, violations of FARA. He was taking in millions and millions of dollars from foreign agents. He not only didn't file under the FARA law,
I know,
but he didn't pay any taxes on them.
I know.
And
that's the hypocrisy.
And they tried to give him a sweetheart immunity deal. That was through the Justice Department. The judge threw that out. It was ridiculous. So then his dad pardons him.
So, Bob, we only have a few minutes left. So tell us the end of the story. At least the story has a happy ending. You did not go to jail. By the way, you must have spent...
20 months went by. Actually, I was never charged. After we filed our brief, it was so compelling. 88 pages that said that I wasn't guilty of anything. Wow. We told them about their virtually killing Dave Loney, my staffer, cursing at my lady. It was so compelling that the day after we filed it, we didn't hear another word until the statute of limitations had run out. We called them, and they said, oh, no, we're not interested in prosecuting anybody. Never mind. They said,
right.
Never mind.
Well, this is, so how you must have had a lot of...
Times. It cost me 3 times for lawyers' fees that I earned on the damn case in the first place. Well, I won't say the amount, but 3 times what I had made in the case in the first place.
Unbelievable. So you must have had an incredibly hard time then, and sleepless nights, knowing that they wanted to come after you and throw you in jail for no crime at all. But folks, that's what the Biden people did.
I thought it was coming. Yes, indeed.
Oh, my gosh. What a story. Well, Bob, thank you for your service to our country. I want to make this point. We only have 30 seconds left. But if it were not for Bob Livingston, we would not have had the balanced budgets that we had under Bill Clinton. I salute you, Bob, for your fiscal conservatism. You were a patriot, and I'm so sorry for what you went through. But I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night thinking, oh, there's going to be people, FBI agents knocking on my door because my crime was working for Trump.
It's happened to far too many people, but thank God President Trump's coming in and changing the scenery. And Pam Bondi, do your job. Get rid of some of these people that abuse. Oh, and what I want to do is make sure that prosecutors do not have immunity. If they maliciously use their office for personal or political reasons, they ought to stand trial to themselves.
That's Bob Livingston, folks, a former member of Congress who was harassed by the Justice Department of the Biden administration. It's happened to far, far too many people, and we need to return to real justice in America, and Trump will bring that. This has been the More Money Show on WABC. Thanks for joining, folks, and we'll see you next week.
At Kroger, an annual Boost membership just got even better. Now you can choose from Disney Plus with ads, Hulu with ads, or ESPN Plus on us when you sign up. Plus, enjoy unlimited free delivery, double fuel points, exclusive offers, and free items. Sign up for a Boost membership today. It's an easier way to save, including new streaming options to relax with while we deliver your groceries. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.